Hello, and welcome back to Minotaur Hotel. We're still trucking along in hinterlands, hopefully making good decisions, probably not, but we know how it is. And then we decided that, after getting some breakfast, we'd check out. Okay. Check out? Oh, okay. Oh, fuck. Uh... Didn't make the... Okay. Well... Yeah, we'll do this. Watch this be a dead end. I'm hoping that since, like, Storm is friends with him, it won't be, but, like, at the same time, you know. Once more, we made our pilgrimage to the bottom of the hinterlands, to the home of the old god, bringing our offering for a most pagan ritual. As soon as I parked the car by the salt plains, we were greeted by the apparitions on the horizon, just shadows standing atop the dunes, bearing witness. A Storm trudged on towards the tapir's hideout, but I stayed behind at a glance to glare at them. As I counted, one by one, they stuck their heads out. 12. Oh. I lowered my gaze, swallowing the knife stuck in my throat, and followed the bull, being followed by the shadows in turn. I treated the whole thing as a ritual in its own right, made sure I wasn't dirty myself, and carried the folded pelt with all the respect and care of a relic. As I left the car, I had thrown some paperclip fragments over my shoulder towards the gear shift and cup holder. The last thing I wanted to do was litter on this land under the watcher's gaze. Half an hour later, we found the tapir's hideout. And as soon as we laid eyes on it from atop a dune, I found myself pushed to the ground. Boss? Okay. Everything got dark and musty. I tried to grab for my gun, but quickly realized the pelt was somehow covering my face and pulling me down. I heard breathing, and then the whole thing squeezed me. It stuck itself to my feathers, too. That's when I felt the burning. Get off of me! It's alive! Oh, get this thing off me! It's alive! Old man, help! As soon as a snort cut the air, the pelt went slack. I pulled it off my face without any issue. Okay. Oh, they're distressed. Good. Sorry about that. I reckon I got a little overexcited. Just like me, really. Quick, hand it over. I've been waiting for a long time to have my skin back. I was shaken from the... Oh, that looks loud. Just a little bit. There we go. I was shaken up from the surprise, but still had enough presence of mind to not make a fuss. With how fickle and dangerous gods can be in the stories, it's never a good idea to give them a reason to fuck you over. I got back to my feet, did my best to restore the pelt back to a presentable and ceremony-worth state, and offered it to him. I kept my eyes down and gave him a half bow. I didn't know the proper rites for his culture, but I figured that was acceptable enough as a show of respect. Your skin, sir. Retrieved from the old town's church. The pelt stirred again, and this time stretching itself towards its owner. Meanwhile, the tapir didn't bother with any pomp. He snatched it from my hands without a single word of gratitude. He caressed it like an old lover, and the thing almost returned the hug, but it didn't go any further than that. After a minute of inspection, he folded the pelt and tucked it into his robe. "You did well, boys. Come now, sit with me, for I have much to tell you." We sat cross-legged on the salt, by a dune that provided us with some shade from the unyielding sun. The tapir kept on hugging his old pelt beneath his robes, and I could swear it was moving around in response. "Almost 100 years ago, a hunter caught me and took my skin away. Bastard, it didn't even bother trying to kill me. He knew I was no ordinary animal, and thought only that kind of torture would banish me. Poured holy water over my head, too, and that's how my skull ended up like you're seeing now, burnt to the bone. I'm a god, boys, and that kind of defilement, that rape, robs us of our power. At the same time, it releases curses upon curses onto this world. Now, would you believe it if I told you this story's been repeating itself for thousands of years? The people who live here before the arrival of the white man were just as ruthless as that hunter. They ravaged the land, each other, and me as well. Burned the land to make way for their crops, killed and devoured each other in their wars, murdered and skinned my worshippers and I. I've lost count of how many times I've been defiled in that manner, only for a regretful young man or two to bring my pelt back to me. It's always the same story." I wasn't keen on interrupting him, but his silence clued me in that he wanted a response. Recursion. That's what people call it nowadays. I never bothered giving it a name. So natural a thing it is. I reckon you must be well acquainted with it yourself, with your grandfather's tale. He came to me a year or two after my worshippers were killed, and told me his sob story. Back then, there was this ruckus going on about children going missing overnight, and the colonel was keen on finding the culprit, so he put pressure on his lackeys to find something. Your dear old grandpa was told, in confidence, that my worshippers were trying to retrieve my pelt. A real, sensitive matter, because the Christians used to think of me as some sort of devil. His skull rattled out, a chuckle at that. Don't know how it went, but I reckon he mentioned it to the colonel, who then had all of my people shot down. Oh, and the kids kept going missing to this day. No one's tried doing shit about it since then, either. His eyeless gaze locked onto me, and even in the absence of lips, brows, or any other features, the sheer hatred coming from him was clear as day. Something deep inside me yelled it was a trap, but no amount of effort could get me to run away. My legs were stuck in place. I looked at Storm, but he seemed calm, and just listening to the old man's story. I couldn't gesture, speak, or even budge. All I could do was look back at the tapir, who seemed well aware of my predicament. The folded pelt twitched under his arm. Now, you'll listen to me, boy. I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. What you've done today only barely scratches the surface of the debt your grandpa incurred. Truth is, there's no forgiveness for all of the people who died because of him. It wasn't just my worshippers, you know. That old peacock had a long and bloody trail behind him. They stopped looking for where those kids had disappeared, to the second they got rid of those scapegoats. That's on their head, too. It's no wonder he got murdered in the middle of the night. Someone felt like taking revenge, and went for it. Hell, If, I wish I was the one who'd done it, but well, I couldn't lift a stone to crush a coconut, let alone a skull. The pelt twitched on every muscle it could, squeezing his side. As far as I'm concerned, your Gramps must be burning in hell right about now. There's sin no amount of praying, and pleading can absolve, you know. Plenty of people like to think they can be forgiven cause, please, I had no other choice. But he did. That fucker could have run away again. And started over elsewhere. He was just too weak to do it. My vision blurred, my cheeks were damp. So, as far as I'm concerned, you've only barely repaid your debt, and if you expect me to be nice and kind about it, then fuck right off. I'll never be grateful for anything ever again, especially from someone of your ilk. The only favor I'll do for you is telling you the truth. I lied. I don't know shit about that hotel you're looking for, except for what your grandfather told me. So get lost and never come here again. And you. He looks over to Storm, who now seems at least agitated by the tapir's words and the tone of voice. With his gaze off of me, I almost bolted, almost threw up. I'll never be grateful again. But to you, I will say I'm sorry. I said the story has happened again and again, didn't I? My worshippers butchered. I kept being skinned alive, and then some degenerate or others trots down here to get it all fixed. Except all that blood's pooling and rotting, and stinking up the place with defilement upon defilement. And every time it's happened, I've cursed the land and its people. He sat back, almost defeated, almost nostalgic. A few thousand years ago, before humans got all fancy with their killing, people used to come down here for the salt. I still got along with them back then. They respected my tapirs, used my salt to preserve their food, and I made sure they didn't get ill or anything of the sort. For a while, I gave them youth. People would reach their 80s, not feeling a stitch of pain in their back, because each grain of salt had a bit of my deity in it. But you defiled a god. You unleash a curse, as natural as the tide. It ain't even something I could stop once it begins. But you'd better believe I went wild with it, boy. I've cursed this land 100 times over, and I gave all of the ungrateful vermin in this pit exactly what they wanted. For decades now, the more you ate my salt, the more stagnant you'll become. Take it enough of it, and not even death will come over for you. But you can bet your sorry ass it won't be a life worth living. I'm bitter as hell, kid. Wouldn't even bat an eye if every human in this hole kneeled over and died. But I figured keeping them alive and suffering was more worthwhile. It's given me a chance to make them squirm. I've unleashed that curse, a thousand others, and I don't regret a single bit of it. This is the real world, kid. Defilement upon defilement, all the way to the top, until it all falls over and crushes whoever was involved, all the way down at the bottom. You, though, I'm sorry for you, but only 'cause you ain't human. Still, if fucking over a dozen or so innocent people is the price for what I did, I'll admit, I never really cared. On one hand, I feel sorry all my curses gave you a bad hand in life. On the other, Mortals are all the same, so you can go and fuck yourself too. So here's what I'm gonna do. With my pelt returned, I have some power again. I can dissipate my curse. That means no more stagnant salt, and no more stagnant immortality. Actually, let me take it a step further. No more salt, period. I'll make sure it all seeps out of the ground. That way, these humans can try growing some crops here for a change. Maybe you can be happy knowing that you doing this service led to this one good thing. One day, one damn fine day, this hellhole might be decent. But that's gonna take a while. Don't count on seeing it in your lifetime. Look around. There's a goddamn lot of salt. He rattled out a laugh and knocked his bony fist on the hardened ground to his side. It wasn't a strong hit, but the salt cracked. But, sir, what if someone comes for you again? Oh, don't you worry your horny little head. I'm not gonna stick around for some other degenerate to come down here and skin me again. You see, the bird's grandfather didn't get all my worshippers killed. A few escaped. But time hasn't been kind, boy. There's only one left nowadays. Just one. And he's dying now. Even as we speak. When he finally kneels over, there'll be no saving what's left of my mind. I'll become so much worse than you could ever imagine. His hands clenched into fists. A sigh escaped his chest, both liberated and sorrowful. Even I have my limits, you know. Now that I have my pelt and can restore my true form, pretty soon I reckon it'll be about time I kill myself and move on. Do it while I still have the chance to do it on my own terms. Assuming my boy doesn't croak too soon, I'll look for him. Maybe we can even die together. So, while I still have my mind here, I won't be needing this anymore, so consider it my bequest to you. In the blink of an eye, he had grabbed Storm's hand and pried it open. His own bony fingers curled into a claw over it. Storm was shaking, trying and failing to speak. Just as the world around us shuddered, he closed his eyes. But I didn't. I couldn't. I saw a thread of light and a curtain of crystals falling from the tapir's hand, both burning white like the sun. It left an afterimage on my eye, and probably would have done some permanent damage that had the thread not dug itself into the skin of Storm's palm and disappeared. This is the very last speck of goodness I had in me, Storm. My gift, from one cursed beggar to another. The crystals had flowed from his hand, clumped together into a rough, flower-like shape. As for this, consider it a little treat, my purest salt. If you ever attempt to write, or any sort, use it, and you'll learn the true meaning of a miracle. Then his gaze turned back towards me, savage and wild like a beast about to tear another's throat out. And you, count yourself lucky. Were it not for the boy treating me like a person for all those years, I would have turned you into an arrowhead. If only your bloodline had been half as merciful to mine, as I've just been to you. I hope you get your head smashed in, just like your dear old grandpa. And I sure as hell hope you're awake to feel every hit cracking your skull, scrambling every bit of your brain together into a mess on the floor. I was glad of the spots. I was glad of the spots obscuring my vision. I didn't have to meet his empty socketed gaze. I hope your body is left to rot and bloat on a river until it bursts apart at the seams. Being eaten by birds is too good for the likes of you. My wish is that the fish nibble you until you're unrecognizable. I hope your family finds you, and I hope they all die in a death as horrible as yours. But not before before spilling their rotten seed and spewing out a new generation of wretches so that their pain and disgrace may never end. May you live long to toil and cry out, but never for long enough to enjoy any fruit of your labor. May your lineage perish, and may this world die with it. Fuck off. The world burst into a wave of white. Storm kept his eyes closed, but I didn't have the same privilege. It burned, like looking directly into 1,000 suns. Something in my blood boiled over. I came to a few hours later. The sun was just setting. Storm was lying on his side, just unconscious, breathing normally and with no injuries. He had a solid chunk of rock salt in his hand. We didn't talk much on our trek back to the car. It felt wrong to break the silence of the plains. Like even then, it would interrupt some ritual. Not even the 12 shadows who had watched our approach were among the dunes now, and on some level, I was afraid of someone or something finding us in that moment of weakness. Okay, I'll end this part here. I'll see you around, everyone.